Great rewards don't wait, so why should you? Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all of your Invigor hybrid canola by November 14th. Talk to your retailer. Terms and conditions apply.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is a Monday, October 27th. Yes, Agronomic Monday. And I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. Today's show brought to you by Nufarm and Nufarm Soil Actives. We will have a product spotlight in our third segment with Tyler Gullen, and you'll learn all about some exciting new products from Nufarm. We've also got Peter Wheat Pete Johnson joining me for the last two segments of the show. We've got plenty to talk about, including, and I tried very hard, everybody, to make it as spooky as possible, phantom yield loss. Yes, indeed. That's about as spooky as I could make it, though. Check out The Agronomist tonight, however. We're going to be talking about creepy crawly things. Now, to kick off the show, however, I've got Kelvin Heppner's conversation with Federal Ag Minister Heath MacDonald. This is a conversation fresh off MacDonald's trip to Mexico, but prior to him leaving for China on Saturday. Now, we had that story on Real Agriculture before it was public knowledge, so tip of the hat to Kelvin on that one. Lots to unpack in today's show, so if you've got any feedback, make sure you call or text that feedback line, 1-855-776-6147. We are going to take our first break here from RealAg Radio, brought to you by Nufarm Soil Actives, and we'll be back with Kelvin Heppner's conversation with Heath MacDonald right after this. I'm Lyndsey Smith, and joining me now for this product spotlight, it's Tyler Gullen, Technical Services Manager with Nufarm.
We just received registration for a new soil active herbicide, Valterra cereals. Really nice option that growers can spray in the fall just before freeze up, or else in the spring once that snow melts too. I think to me there's three main benefits to those soil actives. Firstly, you get that residual weed control. You can catch that first flush of weeds in the spring, kill them off before you go and seed, and that can lead to cleaner fields, getting that crop off to a great start, and really keep more of that moisture and nutrients available to that crop. The second benefit is as a resistant management tool. It's kind of your one shot in the year to mix up that routine that those weeds like and really get ahead of those weeds and that resistance. The third reason is just full flexibility, and you can apply these in the fall once harvest is wrapped up and things slow down on the farm a little bit. So you don't have to drag that sprayer out as early that crazy spring seeding season. You don't really have to rush back out as if you would if you didn't have those residuals. You can visit our website at nufarm.ca. Definitely if you're kind of for AgriTrade November 5th to 7th, come chat with us at that booth. It's 418 in the Prairie Pavilion.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Monday, October 27th. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. Today's show brought to you by Nufarm and Nufarm Soil Actives. As promised, we've got Kelvin Heppner's conversation now with the Federal Ag Minister Heath MacDonald. This is on the heels of his meetings down in Mexico and just ahead of him leaving Saturday for China, where he plans to, if possible, discuss tariffs between our two countries. Listen now.
Tell us a bit about the trip, the meetings that you participated in down in Mexico with your Mexican counterpart. Take us through that week and some of what you learned, what you saw, and what was accomplished down there.
Well, we had a good week. I think it was successful. When you go on these trips, you never know what to expect sometimes. But the minister, or I should say the Secretary of Agriculture in Mexico, is well rehearsed in what Canada has to offer, and we had some great discussions. we set a path forward for some prime industries, and we ranked it as a very successful trip. And then we ended up in Guadalajara, and we got to visit with some stakeholders down there. In fact, a couple of one business that owns a couple of processing plants here in Canada as well. So in all effects, I think we had a successful trip, and we look forward to future communication with them. We developed a pretty good relationship prior to going there with the secretary, and I think that in itself paid dividends when we got there. So we felt successful, Kelvin, and we hope to do more business with Mexico, and we put some perimeters in place that hopefully allows our exports to flow a little more freely in that regard.
Of course, this is all in the context of the upcoming, or maybe we could say it's already underway, the review of CUSMA USMCA or TMEC, as I believe they call it in Mexico. Was the main focus prep for that negotiation, or was this about getting some outcomes in more the short term, some accomplishments, some red tape reduction and increased trade in the meantime as well?
Well, I think our goals were very specific, obviously, but and adding to that, you're exactly right. I mean, we need that relationship. We need the communication prior to the CUSMA review. And that was coming from both sides, Canada and Mexico. So that was extremely important. And then we had our specifics that we wanted to, ease requirements for things like eligible apples from the East Coast. We wanted to ensure that the phytosanitary certificates were looked at and aligned, that products like canola can pass more freely and without impediments and barriers into each countries. So there's things like that electronic certificates, digitization we talked about sharing science. They have some issues right now with their beef herds that we may be able to assist in that regard. And then really a lot of pet food was another one, for example. Beef is, as you know, into Costco, 41 stores. Costco's expanding again. Extremely important with JBS. So they did a lot of the groundwork on that. So it's it's collaborating with the New World, I guess, in trade, but developing a relationship that's extremely important. And then we had some specific visits to properties, and I have to get these names right. But Group Trimex, they're a large company in Mexico that just bought a crushing plant. So Olamex is increasing their imports by 50% in 3 to 5 years, so their intake of canola. And then we met finally with Group Vita, and they're the ones that own the 2 plants, one in Manitoba and one in Alberta. And they just continue to grow. We were at their processing plant. It was very interesting to watch, but they were producing, for example, with Canadian oats, granola bars, about 800 a minute, packaged, ready to go. And they were working around the clock. So things like that, I think we needed to, talk to them, build those relationships, understand what their impediments are, if they have any, and work towards that. But I can tell you the secretary from Mexico, he was schooled in the U.S. His English is perfect. It made my job much easier. And he was fully aware of what we were looking for in regards to the regulatory issues. And then, of course, the apples, the pet food, the beef. And then we have some other things in the hopper that we're hopefully ready to discuss in the near future. So it was a successful trip by all means.
From what I understand, Mexico's economy has actually been doing quite well. Do you see Mexico as kind of an untapped market that Canada has maybe overlooked, to where we haven't fully gained value from it that we could have in the past, or is this going to be a market that's still tough to crack, and we'll have to scratch and claw to get all the market share that Canadian exports can, that kind of thing? Or how do you come back from this trip feeling about the Mexican market and its potential?
Well, they're growing their middle class. We stayed in Mexico City, Kelvin, and it's 23 million people. So that indication alone gives us a sense that they import close between 40 and 50% of their food. So they can't feed themselves. So they need their food to come from somewhere. Canada's prime in that regard. And I think they're willing partners right now. I think with everything that's going on geopolitical, we have a partner in Mexico and they have a partner in Canada. So hopefully we can, we presented to them that they have a trusted partner in Canada. And building on those companies, we had a Minister of Agriculture from Manitoba, a minister from Ontario Agriculture. We spoke at round tables. We hosted events. It was amazing to hear how invigorating everybody was to want to do more. And I think that's key. There's some new opportunities too, but I think enhancing what we already have there is especially important. And I believe there's another session in February, if I'm not wrong, that many more groups will be going down. Most of it will be focused in Guadalajara, which is a very agricultural place. So I look forward to that. But building upon these relationships, I can't say enough about it. Being able to pick the phone up and text the secretary and him replying within minutes, extremely important. You know what? It was a good trip. And if they were all like this, Kelvin, the world would be a better place and my job would be a hell of a lot easier. But they're not going to be all like this. But this was a good trip.
What is Mexico looking for from Canada in terms of things that the Canadian side may have to change to gain benefits going the other way?
Well, I think a lot of it's innovation and technology. Interesting enough. I mean, Canada is out in front of plant-based science is another one for sure. But Canada farmers, we're out in front of a lot of this. And when you start talking to other countries, they say, oh, that's interesting. Even embryos for beef and stuff like that. So it's extremely important to them. So when we start talking about the innovation technology we have, whether it's dairy or beef or what have you, even crops, they're listening intently. You can tell, and they're taking notes. So a lot of it would be in that field from us. Of course, they'll always want to maybe sell more tomatoes or something to that effect, that's part of trade. That's a part of business that we're in. But they, for example, have a real issue with it's a screwworm in their beef right now. We feel that we may be able to help them in that regard. So we're working on that. We have Canadian companies that are fully well aware of that situation, one right here in Ottawa. Those are the types of things that we can do in turn. So it's a this for that type of thing, but it's mostly innovation technology and plant-based science. So bioscience is what they're interested in.
So to me, that is somewhat interesting because the previous administration in Mexico had some restrictions on genetically modified crops, and that was an interest of the previous president particularly. Did you get any sense of that still being an obstacle for Canadian exports and potentially canola being implicated in that, given vast majority of canola is genetically engineered?
No, we didn't actually. And I think, with our Canada-Mexico action plan, interesting, the Prime Minister and the President have formed a really strong relationship as well. So it allowed us to go in behind and do our job, specifically in these markets. So it's something that wasn't brought up to us. And again, we have people ordering more canola. There's one company there increasing by 50% over the next 3 to 5 years. So we were in that plant. We seen it. We talked to them. And they're excited to grow. So it was a good conversation all the way around with everybody. Basically, we met, and I look forward to getting back there. To be quite honest with you.
All right. How much talk was there about the upcoming CUSMA USMCA review? Of course, Canada and Mexico have a lot in common when it comes to being very trade dependent on the U.S. market. Was there discussion about how countries are going to approach those negotiations?
Well, I think, part of this visit was to develop that relationship, to have those conversations prior to or during. So being able to fully understand where they're coming from within those negotiations is important. And that's basically the outcome that we wanted. We wanted to be able to talk about it. We wanted to be able to connect with one another when we had to, and maybe utilize that for those trade negotiations.
There's been talk of the U.S. administration potentially taking more of a bilateral approach. Is that something that Mexico and Canada have? Did you have any discussion about the potential pros and cons, or whether you'd be for and against more of a bilateral versus trilateral type North American trade agreement?
No, we didn't, and I think we both realize the importance of CUSMA. The three countries have benefited, no matter what we hear now in the media and the geopolitical landscape we see. But I think all three countries would somewhat agree that CUSMA has been working extremely well. I mean, Mexico and Canada alone increased their trade since 2018 or 19 by 50%. So it's been very beneficial to both of us, and that's the route we're trajectorying towards. And I think that's exactly the way Mexico is looking at this as well. And so that, at this time, Dominic LeBlanc's down there every second week, and we're working hard to make sure that we get a fair deal for Canada, and hopefully Mexico is alongside us as well.
We are seeing, there were reports earlier today or late yesterday that Mexico's economy minister made some comments about the renegotiation of the North American trade deal being 90% done. Do you agree with that from your perspective, or is it a matter of the final 10% still being the majority of the work on the deal?
Well, I can't speak. I didn't see that report, so I really can't speak too much about it. But look, 96% of our products are moving tariff-free right now into the U.S. I don't know exactly relevant to Mexico or what they say, but I can tell you from meeting with their Minister of Agriculture, we want CUSMA to remain intact as much as possible. We want to be a part of that, and we're going to work towards that.
Final question then I have to ask you. The budget is just around the corner. We also have the upcoming additions to the nation building project list before the Grey Cup is happening here in Manitoba. Any word in terms of agricultural stuff that we should be expecting in the budget or that nation building list?
Well, certainly. I certainly hope so. I think the infrastructure side, I hope, is something that we're keying in on. I think if we want to do trade, we have to get things to market, and we have to do it cost effective and in a timely manner. So that's something that I know even the Prime Minister has said before, that he understands it. He fully understands how important agriculture and agri-food is to the economy of this country. And if he wants to grow that economy, he knows he needs to be focused on that as well. So I think, obviously we want to look at make sure that and do a scrub of our programs and make sure we're being effective with everything we do here. And I think, I'm relatively new of 6 months, and if there's duplication out there, then we need to take a look at it and see where we can better put our resources. That type of thing is part of this package too, but certainly, hopefully there'll be some good stuff in there for agriculture.
All right, and we will, of course, see that budget coming up very soon. Okay, we're going to take a quick break here on RealAg Radio, brought to you by Nufarm Soil Actives, and I'll be back with today's Product Spotlight.
Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Heppner and Lyndsey Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, channel 147, Sirius XM. I'm Lyndsey Smith with Real Agriculture, and joining me now for this product spotlight, it's Tyler Gullen. He's Technical Services Manager with Nufarm. Welcome here, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Tyler, what is new at Nufarm?
Yeah, we're really excited that we just received registration for a new soil active herbicide to complement the portfolio Nufarm already has. So we've always had really great options for growers with products like Fierce or Valterra, but we're excited to add Valterra cereals to the lineup. So Valterra cereals takes that trusted Valterra product and adds in flurazlam, which is another herbicide with soil residual for use for cereals. And Valterra's always worked really great on a lot of different weeds, but one drawback is it's only a single mode of action and only suppression on certain weeds like volunteer canola. But by adding this second active ingredient, we're getting better activity on those flushes of volunteer canola, as long as a lot of other problem weeds in cereals like cleavers and wild buckwheat, and control of weeds that are already emerged if you're out there spraying in the spring. So really just seeing a lot better consistent control of weeds all across Western Canada. If it's like a dry spring, that flurazlam kind of helps hold those weeds back until you get that activating moisture to get that soil residual kicked in. They're also, on wet years, they both really seem to complement each other pretty well. So, yeah, it's just a really nice option for cereals that, growers can spray in the fall just before freeze up, or else in the spring once that snow melts too.
Moisture, always that key question for the prairies, of course. Now, you mentioned this, addition of another active. Nufarm certainly has focused on those soil active herbicides for the past decade. Why that focus? Why is a soil active herbicide so important for Canadian farmers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think to me there's, three main benefits to those soil actives. And the first, obviously, that you get that residual weed control. So, you can catch that first flush of weeds in the spring, kill them off before you go and seed. And that can lead to, cleaner fields, getting that crop off to a great start and really keep more of that moisture and nutrients, available to that crop. But, by taking care of that first flush of weeds and getting up to 8 weeks of activity on those flushes of weeds, kind of means when you come back to do your burn down or even your in crop apps, that those weeds are just a lot smaller and fewer in between, and really just helps the rest of your herbicide passes shine throughout the year that much better. I think the second benefit is as a resistant management tool. They usually have these residuals have different herbicide groups that you can't apply in crop; they're not safe to. So it's kind of your one shot in the year to mix in those groups. Mix up that routine that those weeds like, and really get ahead of those weeds and that resistance. And I think the third reason is just, that whole flexibility and time management aspects. You can apply these in the fall once harvest is wrapped up and things slow down on the farm a little bit. So you don't have to drag that sprayer out as early that next spring and that, crazy spring seeding season. You don't really have to rush back out as if you would if you didn't have those residuals.
So you hit on one key point there, that flexibility. So how do products like this new one add flexibility into the busy seeding season?
Yeah, you bet. So, I think by letting those residual herbicides manage those first flushes of weeds, it really reduces that stress of, having to race back to those fields before those weeds take over. It's like, that spring season is just so unpredictable with the weather and breakdowns and everything else that goes into it. So, you might not get a chance to get back to those fields until right before your seeding. So it's a really nice option having that fall application down with Fierce or Valterra cereals. Just gives that peace of mind that those weeds are being managed while you're out busy doing other things. In that same way, it gives you a little more flexibility for like your in-crop timing too. That's you can use these residuals, hold those weeds back, keep those weeds small and under control, and then you might be able to push back your in-crop applications in those fields while you're dealing with more pressing weed challenges in some other fields, and come back a little later to deal with those fields that have the residuals.
Flexibility. I like it, especially in the very busy spring season when time is of the essence. And as you mentioned, that all-important sort of way to trick Mother Nature a little bit, because we know biology loves when we're predictable. It adds that layer of unpredictability, which can really help on the weed control side.
Yeah, no kidding. Life finds a way, as Jeff Goldblum would say.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Now, for those who are interested in, of course, this new product from Nufarm, but all the products in the lineup, where can producers go for more information? Where can they maybe find you out and about in real life?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for more information on Fierce Sister or the new Valterra cereals, you can visit our website at nufarm.ca or call our 1-800 line at 1-800-868-5444, or else just talk to your local Nufarm territory manager. And definitely, if you're going to be in central Alberta for AgriTrade November 5th to 7th, definitely come chat with us at that booth. It's 418 in the Prairie Pavilion, and we'd be happy to chat with you.
All right, AgriTrade. It feels like this meeting season has snuck up on us. So here we are, already planning to head out the door to AgriTrade. So everybody find the Nufarm booth. As you said, 418. Is that correct?
Yeah,
That's it.
Absolutely.
All right.
There.
Okay. Thank you, Tyler. Thanks so much for joining me here on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Ever hear that good things come to those who wait? Well, we think it's more like great rewards come to those who book their Invigor hybrid canola early. Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all your Invigor needs by November 14th. Speak with your local retailer about eligible hybrids. Terms and conditions apply. Book early. Come out ahead.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Monday, October 27th. It is Agronomic Monday, and it is also a show brought to you by Nufarm Soil Actives. Coming in hot, it's Peter Pete Johnson, fresh off a weekend of thespianism. Is that what you did all weekend?
That is what I did all weekend, absolutely. And so the show ended on Sunday. We had just a great run. It was a ton of fun. And I'm not sure I'm coming in hot, though, Lyndsey, because dang, it was cold last night, man.
Really
we have lost summer. We are definitely into fall. It's Ontario, or it's actually North America. We should expect that fall is going to happen, but I don't know, we got a really extended summer that helped a lot of double crop soybeans do much better than what we expected they would.
Mm-hmm. We will talk a little bit about that today. But, Pete, you did mention, okay, so we're late October. Friday is Halloween. So this is my one chance of having a spooky show. And so So I will say, shout out for the agronomist tonight. We're going to be talking about the gruesome and spooky life of creepy crawlies in your field. So I've got some fantastic entomologists lined up to talk about the weirdest and wildest things they see out of our friends and foes in the field, of our insect friends. So we're going to do that. But to start this segment to talk agronomy, we're going to talk phantom yield loss. Okay, I had to... In corn, Pete, there are those that believe in phantom yield loss. Is it real? What is it? Who is this phantom?
Yeah, exactly. And Lyndsey, so as soon as you say phantom, I have this visual image of this ghost, wafting down through the cornfields and stealing yield, and there's no answer for why it happens. And come on, people. I mean, I'm looking forward to tonight's agronomist because, man, there are some, like, you go to a horror film and they have all these things they've dreamed up. Most of them are based on things that actually happen in the soil with some of these insects. They are horrific. So that should be just a ton of fun. But when it comes to phantom yield loss, like, there's lots of studies that have been done on this. And let's start, Lyndsey, with, I don't care what crop we are talking about. Nothing good happens to crops in the field once they reach physiological maturity. So the quicker you can get them out, and I am a broken record on this, when it comes to the wheat crop, people who sit on their butt and wait for the wheat crop to get to 13% moisture so they don't have to pay drying, like, that is just such a missed opportunity, because we always get better quality wheat when we harvest early. And yeah, we pay for drying, but man, if you get to 13% and you're in Western Canada, next thing you know, it's 8%. So you've lost basically 6% in yield, and you're going, well, I didn't have to pay drying. Yeah, but the drying would have been less than the 6% in yield that you lose. So I'll get on topic now, but it just, those concepts, similarly with corn harvest, people, they don't want to take corn off at 30% moisture because it costs more to dry it than it does at 25% moisture. And you're right, but that difference is incredibly small. That 5 points between 30 and 25 comes out really easily. The last 2 points of moisture between 17.5 and 15.5, they are the hard ones to take out. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at, the cost of drying, that initial put it through the dryer is the big cost. So as far as phantom yield loss, we get yield loss, but I really kind of get frustrated when people say it's phantom. No, it's amazing. And if you don't pay attention or you don't think about it, but you'll walk through the field and you will see tips of cobs that are just chewed away like crazy. And you go, what would do that? But it could be birds. It can be raccoons. Believe it or not, rats and mice crawl up the corn stalk and will just shred that corn husk back to eat the kernels. Turkeys are out there. There's just so many deer damage. If you go to further north, it's bear damage. There's so many things that can actually reduce the yield as it stands in the field. And this time of the year, the animals are really looking for food sources, and grain corn is a pretty sweet thing for them to feed on. So we get yield loss. The phantom component is this concept that the crop will metabolize away a bunch of yield. And if that, let's think about that for a minute, because there's no question that the kernel is alive. If the kernel wasn't alive, it wouldn't grow next year. Mm-hmm. But if there was loss from metabolization, like if that embryo was respiring enough to make a huge difference, it's still alive at 15.5 moisture when we put it in the bin for storage. If it was respiring significantly, if you left it in the bin for a year, it would weigh, 75 or 80% of what it weighed when you put it in the bin. But that doesn't happen. Does it respire? Yes. But that respiration is so tiny that it's basically unmeasurable. It's sort of like the bear goes dormant. So it's alive, but barely, and it's waiting for the right conditions to start that respiration. Now, I will say, Lyndsey, that out in some cornfields, we have weird things happening, and we see some corn kernels that are sprouting. And you go, oh yeah, there's lots of corn kernels sprouting out there as I walk through cornfields, and there's a bunch of reasons why that can happen. It's hormonal. Once that kernel sprouts, oh yeah, you get big respiration losses, because now that embryo is trying to grow, and it's using the stored photosynthate, the carbohydrate in the kernel for that growth, and we get a ton of respiration. So sprouting is a bad thing, as we know. in a crop we're going to store. But as far as this phantom yield loss, there's other reasons to get the crop out of the field early. It's not phantom at all. Get over that concept, but still go to the field and combine your crop.
There you go. There is no sheet and eyes cut out and woo in the corner. There you go. Okay, now, but I mean, sprouting corn seems to me like something that happens in like wet weather. But as you mentioned, hormones potentially at play as well. But we did see a lot of rain over the last week, finally. But there are also, and I found this so on Thursday's show, spoke with farmers. Two of them here in Ontario, both of them sort of waiting for this crop to dry down to the point where they could harvest it, which plays into this year. But there are also those wondering why the heck, this crop isn't drying down, or there's questions about black layer. And what do we need to know about black layer in corn and what this season has taught us so far?
So what this season has taught us so far, Lyndsey, is that as much as we understand the physiological process of black layer, we still don't understand well enough what's going on inside the crop when it gets under stress. And so there's all sorts of weird things going on out in the field. And we have corn that has brown layered. So it brown layers, we typically think of brown layer when we have an immature corn crop, it gets frozen. And so once photosynthate stops going into the kernel at a significant rate, then the kernel seals off that layer where the translocation happens into the kernel. And so if you get a frozen crop to the point that the shank is frozen, the leaves are frozen off, and you can't get translocation because all of that tissue is damaged, then it brown layers because there's no more photosynthate going into the kernel, so it brown layers. But we didn't have frost this year until like the last couple of days in most of Ontario. I know some areas had it a bit earlier, but there's lots of areas had no frost. In fact, green leaves on the corn plant, and we get brown layer. And you go like, how can that happen? And then you also get kernels with half milk line where it sits at half milk line. And it sits there for 2 weeks. And again, you say, like what is going on? And we look at the maturity of the hybrid and we say, well, that's a 3,000 heat unit hybrid or a 100-day relative maturity hybrid. And we, in the same field, we have a 92-day hybrid. And the 92-day hybrid is not black layered, and sometimes the 100-day hybrid is black layered, or neither one of them black layered. And we've had lots of crop heat units they should be black layered. So there's all these questions that are happening. And so we really need to kind of, I think, go back and say, well, what are the processes that cause black layer? And it really is this translocation into the kernel. And when that slows down to a point that it's not happening, either because the kernel has no more room for that photosynthate, we've filled all the cells and we've made that kernel as big as we can, or the plant can't get it in because of frost, or maybe the plant can't actually remobilize any more photosynthate because it's under such drought stress. It has no moisture left, or maybe it already remobilized everything it had in the stock because it just had so much drought all year that either we had lack of water to push the photosynthate into the kernel, or we ran out of stored photosynthate in the stock, and that whole process stopped and we got brown layer. When we didn't get black layer, the thought, I think, and it's a total hypothesis, but it really comes down to, the kernel wasn't full, and even though it stopped, it would half milk line, and it just kind of said, we got to get more photosynthate in this kernel. So it didn't brown layer, it didn't black layer, but it sat there for 2 or 3 weeks. And without rain, nothing happened. And eventually the kernel just dries out and you get these small shriveled kernels like Mark Davis is getting out at Napanee, where he's got the wheat screens in for his corn harvest because that's how small the kernels are.
Yeesh. So, and there is so much going on here, but I think this is one of those things that we will continue to look into over this winter as we sort of assess the season of exactly that, just the stress, the drought stress or the lack of moisture and how that has played into how this corn crop did or did not mature, I guess is the question. Okay, we've got to leave it there. For now, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio brought to you by Nufarm Soil Actives right after this.
The future of phosphorus fertilizers is Rhizazorb. Craig Dick, VP of Sales and Marketing for Phosphollutions, explains.
Rhizazorb 8390 is a next-generation dry phosphate fertilizer that replaces MAP or DAP. Rhizazorb technology is incorporated into traditional phosphate manufacturing, resulting in a finished granule that enhances phosphorus uptake, reduces phosphorus use rates, and maintains crop yields.
Preserve yield, optimize phosphorus, and reduce costs with Rhizazorb.
I'm Lyndsey Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode. Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Agronomic Monday. It is brought to you by Nufarm Soil Actives. I'm Lyndsey Smith, your host, and I've got with me Peter Wheat Johnson, our resident agronomist. Pete, I do want to talk about fall weed control, so thank you, Nufarm, for sponsoring the show. As you mentioned in our previous segment, a pretty open fall for many, maybe now some real frosts that have hit, some hard frosts. We did an agronomist not that long ago about fall weed control. Is it too late? What do we have ahead of us here from, yes, we can talk Western Canada, but also Ontario. What do we need to know about fall weed control?
So, Lyndsey, I mean, it is definitely different east versus west, because in Western Canada, you can use fall actives. You can put your spring herbicide down in the fall, and you're dry enough in Western Canada that it doesn't get leached out of the rooting zone for those weeds. And so you can really save some time and get some early weed control by applying herbicides in the fall that have soil activity. We effectively don't do that in Ontario or in Eastern Canada because we just are that much wetter of a climate. And so, for example, there's one grower that I talked to, there's been a real rain zone in Ontario this last week, kind of through that Goderich, Clinton, Mitchell area. One grower in that area, 6 inches of rain in the last week. And so they've gone from being really dry to being really wet, which is no fun. But if you had fall herbicide on with 6 inches of rain, most herbicides are not going to be in that rooting zone anymore. And so that's why we don't tend to use soil actives in the fall. But man, in Western Canada, you get that chance. You should be doing that because it will save you time in the spring. When we come to Eastern Canada, now there's the real question is, will my herbicide still be active and what day do I spray? So one of my clients was going to spray last Friday because the temperatures were good and it was looking like we were getting cold. And of course went to the field and it was raining. So we can't spray. And now the question is, like, we have all these wheat fields where growers have listened to this idiot named Wheat Pete and they let their cover crop grow because if we manage a cover crop right, we really want those oats to get just in the head because they grow so many roots as they go through that process. And to improve soil health, we want root growth. And so now Johnson, it's cold out. So can I still kill my cover crop? And you really do have to start looking at nighttime temperatures. We won't get as good of activity on some of the tough to kill perennial weeds like sow thistle. Canada thistle, we almost get better control because after we get a frost, that's when Canada thistle really starts to translocate down. So that's maybe a benefit. But on most weeds, they're not going to be growing as actively. And if we apply glyphosate today versus 2 weeks ago when it was 25 Celsius and it's, I don't know, let's say it's 8 Celsius today, instead of getting 95% control with the glyphosate that we would have gotten 2 weeks ago, we'll get 90% today. Well, that 90% is still really good, and we've gotten 2 more weeks of root growth, and I think that trade-off is really worthwhile. But when you're looking for what weather conditions that I need to still get good control, you really need to look at nighttime temperatures. With glyphosate, the magic number is -4. So as long as nighttime temperatures are above -4 and you can spray in the middle of the day when it's, at least kind of in that 8 degrees Celsius range or close to that, you will get good activity on the weeds that we're trying to control this time of year, the perennial sow thistle, the Canada thistle, the chickweed, all of those winter annuals and perennial weeds we're trying to get. The cover crops like the oat crop or winter wheat, volunteer winter wheat that I definitely want to kill this fall, they die really easily. So I'm not at all worried about that. The trick is -4. If it goes below -4, then you really have to wait and give it a few days with above -4 temperatures to let those weeds start growing again. And the other thing you should do is if you're looking at a weed that you want to kill, you actually have to give it 2 or 3 days after a -4. Like it went to -2 last night. I'm pretty sure all of the volunteer soybeans out in the wheat fields and in fields that didn't get planted to wheat, they're all going to be black by about 1 p.m. today because they just got killed by frost. They turned black. So you got to wait a couple days to say, was that frost cold enough that it actually killed the leaf tissue? Because if it killed the leaf tissue, there's no point in spraying because the leaf isn't there to take it up. But most of our tough perennials, they will take much colder than -4. A lot of them will take -9. And so you get -4, you got to let them start growing again. So wait a few days, make sure they have good leaf tissue, and find that window where you get that 3 days. If you can get 3 days in a row with nighttime temperatures above -4 and daytime temperatures, close to 10 Celsius, the warmer it is, the better when you spray, you're still going to get what I would consider to be excellent activity.
Now, the one thing that I get reminded of, and I think it is really important, weed control in the fall takes longer. So it'll save you time in the spring. It's the best time to hit some of these. It does its job, but you have to be a little bit more patient with some of the actives.
100%. And great comment, Lyndsey. And, and who cares? Because if it takes 3 weeks for that weed to die, you're not planting anything into it at this point anyway.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's sort of one of those situations where go spray and just have faith. You come out there in the spring and you're going to start with a clean field. And, to quote Peter Sikkema, start clean, stay clean. You spray in the fall, you will start clean. And man, that is incredibly important. True in Western Canada with fall applied actives, true in Ontario, even if you're going to go out there and spray your emerged winter wheat crop. And I've had lots of questions about that. So, should I spray my wheat this fall or should I spray it next spring? Oh my gosh. How many times do I have to say spray it in the fall? Because you might not kill as many fleabane plants, but you will get higher yields. That data is so clear that fall application pays in spades every time.
Mm-hmm. All right. One last topic for today, and I'm lining this up. Hopefully, we'll have it all lined up for next week's Agronomist, but by the time this airs. But want to talk about setting up field trials, what we learn from field trials, and plots. And you've got some plot results to share, and I think that's a great example of why we do this. So what have you learned in this last week? Who's reached out and shared their plot results?
Yeah, and so Lyndsey, plot design is so critically important. So growers definitely need to join that agronomist and listen to the experts. And it's not hard in today's world. Lots of growers are able to do 11 replications across a field or 27 replications across a field, because with auto steer and satellite guidance, man, things are just way easier than they used to be back when I started in the 80s. But a one plot wonder you really have to be careful with. So Ben sent me a great plot result. He did it in the middle of the field. He just turned his starter fertilizer off on his corn planter, and what it gives him is two side by side. So he did a wide enough strip that he could do with starter and without starter, and then at the other side of the without starter plot, he could do without starter, with starter, and so we get 2 reps, which is much more powerful, because growers really should, as they, if you don't have any plots in the field, just every pass up the field, start a new load and just look at how much variability you can get every pass up the field, because it can be really incredible. And that's why we need that replication. But in Ben's case, consistently, just 3 gallons of a liquid starter fertilizer on that corn crop gave him 20 bushel per acre yield increase. And you just go like, how can that be? Because it's such a small amount. But Ben's on a sand soil. And I asked him, he hasn't gotten back to me yet, but I asked him, what was your potash level in that sand soil? Because we have seen some unbelievable yield responses to small amounts of potash applied either in a 2x2 band or right with the seed if you have low potash soil test. It's interesting, with wheat, potash barely matters. With corn, potash is more important than phosphorus, which for a grass crop, that is bizarre. But yeah, really, really interesting from that standpoint. I mean, Brett sent me some plot results. He got 30 bushel per acre more corn by putting manure on between the corn rows in the spring. And that was on alfalfa that had fall manure. And you'd say, wow, alfalfa, fall manure, lots of nitrogen. Why would that need more nitrogen? But in Brett's situation, absolutely, he needed that. And he also had a great comparison of wheat with followed by double crop soybeans right beside his alfalfa. Man, 40 bushels more to that alfalfa crop than wheat with double crop soybeans. And so, I mean, corn following wheat is a great rotation. Apparently, corn following alfalfa is even better.
I got to tell you, forage does amazing things. So
we all need more woolly pigs,
That's
right?
right. Everybody just needs woolly pigs, just like I have. Okay. All right, Pete, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show today. Hope you can make it to the Agronomist tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, X, you name it. We're there, and it should be a great conversation. Thanks, as always. Big shout out, though, everybody. Pete hosts Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday. You can find it at wheatpete.com or, of course, wherever you get your audio. Check it out. It's a fantastic podcast. I love that I get to write it up every single week. It makes me happy. All right, Pete, have a great week.
Yeah, you as well. And thanks, Lyndsey. And by the way, send me your plot results.
This is very important, everybody. All right. Okay. That does it here for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. Thank you so much for making us part of your day. And thank you, of course, to Nufarm and Nufarm Soil Actives for sponsoring today's show. Cheers, everybody.